Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Little, and today I'm joined by Shawn Bowen, Jacob McPherson, and Cameron Peters. Today we're back for Chapter 8, possibly Part 1 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris was an FBI negotiator for 24 years before he retired and started the Black Swan Group. Now he teaches his skills to individuals and groups so he can learn how to better negotiate, so you can learn how to better negotiate in all areas of your professional lives. So over the next few weeks, we'll be going chapter by chapter to discuss all of Chris's techniques and how they can help us. And we are almost done here, but we've still got a few more chapters and they're all going to be filled with some really great stuff. So without further ado, Shawn, go ahead.
Awesome. Welcome back, guys. Chapter 8. On the beginning here, we're going to talk about how equals implementation. So this is one that really pulls off when we were just talking about chapter 7. So it's really good lead into on the hows and the way it's asked, the phrases to use, how to be involved in the behind the scenes feeling of that. And then there's the 7, 38, and 55 percentages that they're talking about. So let's get into this. How equals implementation. Yes is nothing without how. Calibrated how. Questions help guarantee execution. Aim for that's right response. Don't settle for I'll try or you're right. Those mean I plan to fail. So an example of that would be like, yep, you're right. Good to go. We all know what that sounds like. Knows that it's not going anywhere, right? So don't settle for that. Phrases to use would be, how am I supposed to do that? How will we know we're on the right track? How will we address things if we find that we're getting off track? And then to involve the behind the scenes, how does this affect the rest of your team? How on board are the people that are not on this call? And that's what I really want to talk to. And what do your colleagues see as their main challenges in this area? So let's go over this. And let's start with Jacob.
Sure. So I think kind of going off of the how questions, when it comes to conversation with sellers, the one that I always go back to is how can we make this work, or how can we help you? I would say that those are two probably questions that are in almost every conversation, every initial conversation, or every walkthrough that I have with a seller. And it's, again, just to get them to open up about what their situation is and what they feel a solution can be. And then from there, right, it's, okay, that can't work. What if we can do this, or what if we can do that, right? And it's just kind of going from there. We kind of touched on it, I would say, in chapter 7, but the how am I supposed to do that question, again, just to reiterate for anybody who didn't listen to the last episode, is it can come across as accusatory. So we stay away from that. If anybody's wondering why, I would highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode, because we talked about it pretty extensively. And then the only other thing that I will say is how on board are the people not on this call? So when it comes to anybody else that may be involved in the selling process, such as other heirs, right? I mean, we deal a lot with probate. So when it comes to executors, administrators, anybody else that's involved, that's, I would say, probably a question that gets tossed around pretty frequently, as far as who else is involved, and how does this, what we're talking about right now, how does this meet their needs, or are they on board with it? Are we going to have any issues, right? Just trying to dig up information to make sure that you're covered on all your bases. So.
Cool. Cam.
Yeah, so I think definitely, how on board is everybody on this call is the key thing here that we deal with every day. And usually by the time you get into the conversation, hopefully 5+ minutes, you should know, or at least I try to dig if there's somebody else involved in the sale, right? If it's heirs, or if it's a husband, wife, brother and sister. We got one right now that's a brother and sister, right? And so it's definitely that conversation of, oh, okay, well, it looks like there's somebody else on the, or you know what I mean? Is there anybody else on the deed here? Or, I looked it up, looks like there's somebody else on the deed, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, that's my brother. Okay, well, I mean, do you guys get along pretty well? Or, because I got 9 brothers and sisters myself, and we all don't get along. You know what I mean? Just to get that whole, and I'd leverage the whole 9 brothers and sisters, which is true, because people are like, whoa, usually, you know what I mean? So it gets them chuckling a little bit. And usually you'll find that definitely if there's 3 of them or more, that at least one of them does not get along with the others. So that's a good conversation to have. Okay, well, it sounds like Christian is not, you know what I mean, on the best of terms with the rest of you guys. So, I mean, is he on board with this, or are we going to sign some paperwork, get moving toward closing, and then he's just going to throw a wrench in the thing? I mean, what do you think? Have you guys talked to him about this? You know what I mean? And that's how that starts. So I don't know that I use the exact terms, how on board is everybody here on the call or whatever, but it's the same concept. And I think one of the things you're always digging for when you first talk to somebody about whether they're out there selling their house is if they're the only person involved, right? Because we want to make sure everybody else is involved. So yeah, that's definitely the key here for me.
Awesome. Ashley, do you feel like any of this plays in on your side of the house?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've realized that I do a lot of is I try to end my calls, even if it's just with people here in the company, with a summary of, okay, this is what needs to be done, whether on my side or your side. Like I did this with Shawn earlier today, where I was like, okay, so for now, all I need to do is send this assignment, right? And then you get that, that's right, or something like that. So just, I try to do that, like where I end the call with the summary of the action items that need to be completed, sometimes by me, sometimes by the person on the phone, so that we can acknowledge, yes, that's right, that's what needs to be done. Whether or not anyone does it may or may not happen. I know sometimes I slip up too. So just trying to get that that's right response, and to make sure that everyone is aware of what needs to be done. Like Jacob said, we talked last chapter about not using how am I supposed to do that. And I do kind of like the idea of how will we know we're on track. I think that's a really important one for company wise. I think it's hard to really use with a seller, but pretty good to use with a buyer actually, because I know for buyer contingencies, for example, termite moisture letters, septic, foundation issues, whatever, we try to be very clear up front what is about how they're measuring this. So not only do you have until this date at this time to finish your inspection, but if the damages do not exceed this amount of money, then it's fine. And you'll have to provide us with a copy of the inspection report and that kind of thing. So it sort of goes along with that, like how will we address things if we're off track? Just knowing, or how will we know if we're on track, so that we know that we're on track and what everyone's looking for. And then you kind of know how to address things if they're not on track at that point, especially with the buyer. It's pretty much going to come down to a reduction of some kind. But because you have set the boundaries or the limitations or the expectations, that's the word. You've set the expectations ahead of time of how long the inspection can take and how much damage there should be, or it should not exceed. You know automatically that you're going to be moving into that other new phase.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is the 7, 38, and 55% rule that he uses. It says communication is 7% content, 38% tone of voice, and 55% body language. There's a great return on flying to meet people in person. This is one where I kind of go a little bit against this, but this is because of what we do. Pay close attention to the tone and body language of a counterpart. Look for incongruities. I can't even say that. Between tone, look at the differences between tone and body language and words. Use labels to discover the source of these differences. I heard you say yes, but it seemed like there was a hesitation in your voice. No, this is important. Let's make sure let's make sure we get this right. So I play with this a little bit different the way that I do it, because we don't get as much body language unless we're in this like Zoom world, which I think I realize now as we do it, when I tell people that I'm talking to them, like, hey, can you turn the camera on? And I didn't realize why until I wasn't able to be in front of people, because I started recognizing I was looking for body language. I was looking for cues. I was looking for facial expressions, right? I was looking for people, what they were doing with their hands and how they would either lean into the camera or lean back. And it was like the same thing if I was in person, because that's what I've learned to read body language wise. So I think this takes a little bit away from that now that we're in this world that we're recording this is in, COVID times, and it's forced us into a very virtual world. So it's really more important nowadays, instead of just, if you can't have a camera, can you read it through the tone of inflection? Can you read it through the voice? That is a lot harder than most people think it is. And it's even been a transition for me to really do that because I'm just so used to it. Right. So I think a lot of you guys are going to have a good talk about this one, because it's a big part of what we do. And I know a lot of people make fun of this because, I recommend body language books, psychology books, like all this kind of stuff based off of this exact reason, where majority of it is the way people act with their body is just as if they were talking. When I started learning this stuff, it was really interesting to go sit at a Starbucks or go sit at a coffee shop and just not listen to anything and watch. And it was just like reading somebody as a book. It was unbelievable. So how do you guys feel on this? And let's kick it off with Cam on this one.
Yeah, so I think that you're completely right that we have to focus more on the tone during these times because we don't see as many people in person. And you can hear that a lot when you ask these open-ended questions and the way people initially respond, right? You can hear if it's you know what I mean? So I mean, it sounds like you don't get along so well with your brothers. Well, everything's good with so-and-so, but my brother Christian, right? And they might just drop it there. They might just stop, right? You need to dig into that more, right? But there's a tone there. And maybe you need to circle back and say, no, I mean, we were talking earlier, it sounds like there's kind of a problem. Or there might be some issues between you and Christian. So, I mean, is there anything that could, stop this sale from going through? Is there anything that could threaten what we're trying to do here? Can we talk about that? Like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to pry too far into your business, but obviously we're trying to conduct a business transaction here, right? And we don't want to make sure that somebody doesn't come in on that, or somebody doesn't ruin that. It's just listening for those tones and the inflection as well. You can listen for the upward inflection if somebody's kind of accusing you of something, or the downward inflection if they're making a statement. That's the best way to do it now, as we actually meet less and less people in person lately.
Awesome. Jacob?
Yeah, so when it comes to tone in a conversation, that's something that it's the very first thing that I try to pick up on when I'm on the phone with a seller. That's whether or not they've called me or if I'm cold calling. And it's one of those things where I have a tendency to mirror what the other person's tone is on the other end of the phone, right? So I'm going to use kind of a comical example here, but it's something that I always think about when it comes to tonality of conversation over the phone. So one of my old supervisors randomly in the middle of our office one day got a call from his wife. All right. And this is literally right before he gets the phone call. He's in the process of having a very serious conversation about what we're going to do to solve an issue. It was a problem that we had that day that went wrong. Right. So his tone with us was very serious, what are we going to do to make this happen? Right. So, but the second that he answered the phone, he completely flipped. He did a 180 with his wife and he went, "Hey, honey, how are you?" And it was just complete different, just right. He's very serious, very, very driven with us. And then the second he answers the phone with his wife, it's, "Oh, hey, honey, how's your day?" Right? Just complete flip flop. So you're going to get that over the phone, depending on who you call as a seller, right? Sometimes we get older women over the phone they just seem like the sweetest people, right? It's kind of like, it reminds me of my grandmother, right? I just love her. I want to take care of her. So I will match that and I'll be like, "Hey, how are you? Like, how's your day going?" Right? Versus if I get a guy who answers the phone that seems like he's in a hurry, right? "Hello. Hey, how you doing, man? My name's Jacob, not trying to bother you," right? Okay, conversation changes. So I think that how people answer the phone can be a huge indicator of where you should start on the other end and how you can steer that conversation, and ultimately what is going to resonate best with that other person on the other end of the phone based on their tonality. So that's one of the things that I look for literally right when I answer a call, or right when I make a call and the seller answers. So tonality, I think in these types of conversations is massive. And if you can do that, if you can identify that, match it, and then navigate it correctly throughout the course of the conversation, I think that you're going to have a better shot of continuing that conversation and ultimately, moving forward as far as the transaction is concerned, potentially getting to contract, potentially going to closing.
Nice. Ashley, do you play with any of this stuff on your side?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make a few general comments, I guess, because something that I agree with you about is, especially with COVID right now, and even moving forward, where I'm sure a lot of businesses are going to tend to move more virtually, body language it's important, but it's just not going to be as important. I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years, Chris kind of comes back and edits the book and sort of changes up these percentages a little bit. Because, I mean, right now, pretty much everyone is virtual, if you can be. But also body language cues are very different over Zoom than they are, or anything like Zoom, than they are in person. And there are a few reasons for that. I was reading a study done probably over the summer, shortly, when we had been in the pandemic for a few months about Zoom fatigue. And what that is it's so much harder to read body language cues over a computer screen like this, for a couple different reasons. It could be because there's a delay on someone's end or the other for what you're hearing. So while it may seem like as you're talking about a point, someone's fine, and then, 2 seconds later, the delay is sort of fixed and now they're not. And you don't have time to make that pivot or that change for that instant reaction that they give you. It's just also, I don't know, it's a smaller space, which you may not realize, but you have to pay a little bit more attention because it's not a full-fledged person in front of you. It's a little screen, or even if it's a bigger screen, it's not the same size as the person would be in real life if they were sitting across from you. Plus, a lot of people don't like to turn their cameras on. I don't like to turn my camera on. And I think that's part of it, is people tend to get preoccupied looking at themselves in the camera or whatever video chat, and paying less attention to the body language cues of other people. And so you tend to miss things. And then just quality of the video chat. So there might be a delay, but the image might be pixelated. So it might be harder to pick up on some of these cues too. I mean, Jacob's, it's kind of pixelated right now, but he has bad luck with Wi-Fi, so that happens a lot. One other thing I wanted to talk about was that we discussed a few chapters ago. I want to say it was chapter 4 or 5, about reading body language through your tone, because, and I believe Jacob was the one that sort of touched on this as well. Or sorry, it might've been Cam. I'm sorry, guys. But someone talked about this because you can kind of hear when people are like, they're clenching their teeth, or their shoulders are up to their ears because they're like so tense and stressed and like just holding it all within their body. So you can, if you get better about this, you can sort of start reading people's body language by the tone. And now that I say that, it was definitely Cam that talked about this. And so being able to do that, and also recognizing it in yourself, because I have this problem where I grind my teeth at night anyway, but if I'm not paying attention during the workday, my jaw hurts so much by the end, because I'll have been so focused on something or someone that I've been clenching my jaw. And so trying to make it a regular thing for you to think, okay, unclench jaw, roll shoulders out, take a deep breath, and go move from there.
I like it. Good feedback. All right. Well, I think that's going to close us out for this portion. I think we were going to catch up with you guys on the rest of this here shortly.
I don't know. Did you guys want to do the rule of 3 here in this episode, or do you want to save it for the next episode?
I'm game.
Because there's a lot in the next episode.
Let's see. Yeah, let's take a break on it. That way they can pause and come back.
Okay, awesome. So let me go over to my little thing here. Thanks so much for listening to us discuss the first part of chapter 8 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. We'll be back next week for more of chapter 8. If you're enjoying our podcast or our YouTube videos, please leave us reviews or comments and let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear and see in the future, or how wholesaling out of the box or never split the difference have helped you in your business. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.